Hey guys, Pastor Tim here. Hope you're ready for another video from our youth group at Lighthouse Baptist Church. If this is your first time watching a video or you're trying to catch up on a missed lesson, we hope that this video is a blessing to you and helps you grow in your relationship with Jesus Christ.
Choose controlled emotions. All right, choose controlled emotions. And what we're going to talk about in a way is we're going to talk about, when sparks start to fly and so forth. Now, when you guys, not like just like a month ago or just not that long ago, what was a big thing happening in California? Wildfires, all right? All right, a lot of wildfires. Now, Kale, can you just sit up for me there? All right, thank you. All right, how many guys understand that a wildfire does it just start as a wildfire, like this burning inferno? Is that how it usually starts? No, it's not. All right, usually Smokey the Bear is not talking about that. No, it usually starts as what? Someone raise your hand. Grace. Yeah, like say somebody thought they put their campfire out, but they're still burning embers within there, and something runs through it and kicks up, those embers and so forth. What's another thing that probably causes wildfires? Greg?
People will be smoking and throw their cigarettes out the window.
Yes, they're not unlit. They're lit cigarettes that they're done with, stuff like that. What's the most famous historical animal to have caused a fire? Micaiah? Yes, whose cow? You remember? Mrs. O'Leary's cow apparently is charged with causing the Great Chicago Fire back in the day. But anyway, and that was just from kicking over a lantern. Okay, so we understand, guys, let's pay attention. All right, but we understand that wildfires, they don't just come out of nowhere as a wildfire. No, they start small. They start with simply a spark, a small ember, a cigarette butt, a lantern being kicked over by a cow. And what we're going to do is understand the Bible likens a lot of the emotions that young people, adults, and even adults have when it comes to relationships to even that of a fire. Okay? And is a fire a bad thing? No. And the emotions you may have, okay, to another person of the opposite gender is not a bad thing. But it has to be a controlled thing. Because if you're not careful, those little sparks, and I know I said it and some guys are like, oh, why do you say it like that? But you've heard it talked about before, there's a spark or something between that guy and that girl, whatever. But when sparks do start to fly, if you're not careful, it, much like actual sparks, could become a great destructive thing in your life if you're not careful. If you allow yourself to be driven more by your emotions than you are by God. And it takes firefighters such as God, your parents, and spiritual authorities to help fight those kind of fires. But what we're going to talk about tonight is, all right, how can I control those emotions, those specific emotions, so that I don't allow them to become a destructive fire in my life? So when you see me have up here on the title, Choose Controlled Emotions, I'm not talking in the grand, broad sense of like every single spectrum of emotions you may have, you have to bring into control. We're talking specifically about those emotions you may have when it comes to when you're starting to have interest in that other person. Okay. All right. So first, we're going to talk about emotions out of control. So we're first going to talk about the fire, the wildfire that happens. Then we'll discover how to prevent it. Okay. Now, gentlemen with the wrappers and stuff in the back, come on. All right. So one of the greatest dangers to a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship is emotional dependency. Okay. Does anybody have any idea what I mean by emotional dependency? Ethan.
Sorry. Your happiness, I guess, your joy depends on whether you're around them or depends basically on them.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it. Gage, you have a different one?
Similar to like drug addiction, you can't function properly without the other person.
When it's driven to such a point, yeah, you could definitely see that as well. Like, I can't function without that person. Like, oh, my whole world craters without that person. If they simply say yes on a text and they don't add anything else to it, like, or they leave the 3 dots for a while and don't respond, and that just shatters your whole world, okay? Oh, no. So, You know what? That sounds funny, but that is a sign of like, you know what? Maybe I'm becoming a little too emotionally dependent on this other person. Another word for this is infatuation, okay? Or as Bambi said, being Twitter-pated and so forth. But this is infatuation. A definition I'm going to give you for this is to be filled with an intense but short-lived passion or admiration for, okay? And I'll put these 3 words up there. That's part of that definition. An intense, short-lived passion. The root meaning of infatuation actually means to be made foolish, okay? So we have intense, short-lived, foolish. Now, the word infatuation, it makes sense because you'll hear, how many guys have ever watched, or read, I guess, any like romantic movie or something like that where the person says, no, I'm not asking, have you ever watched a romantic, but good job. All right, but where somebody says something like, I've never felt this way before, okay, that usually comes up. Now, that most often obviously comes up when it comes to young people, teenagers, because this is obviously the first time in most cases where you would feel this way. Like, I've never felt this way before. All right, but just because you've never felt this way before doesn't mean you should just get up and run with that feeling. You guys follow me? Okay, you have to understand that feeling first. It's intense. It explains why these feelings are so overwhelming and real, especially to a young person who's probably experiencing this for the first time. Okay? Short-lived explains why so many breakups happen. Why it's short-lived? Because they're acting on an intense emotion, an intense infatuation for this person, this passion, without fully understanding it, and therefore it's short-lived. Now, when it comes to not just young people, but man in general, why is it that these short-term or these intense passions people have, not just for relationships, but for things, like material things in general, why are they short-lived often? We get bored of it, all right? Something new comes along, and that sounds really bad when you take that something new comes along from a material thing to an actual person, but sadly that's often the case where someone better, quote unquote, comes along, right? This is why it's important not to simply move forward in a relationship just because you have an infatuation for that person, okay? That's just an intense, often short-lived passion. And obviously, the end result is foolish. It explains the condition of the mind when these emotions take over. You do the silliest things, and you may act foolish as well. Now, are these emotions, are they wrong? Are they necessary? Now, let me put it this way. Are they evil? No. Who is it that gave you your emotions? God. All right? God gave you your emotions. They're not in and of themselves evil, but can emotions lead to bad things? Yes, they can. Unbridled emotions can lead to bad things. See, God never intended for you to be guided by your emotions. He wants you to be guided by truth. All right? I always give the example of emotions make a great engine. They don't make a good driver. Okay, how many guys, when you play in sports, your coach may say something like, hey, you're mad, like say something happens, like you don't get a call, a foul call or something like that, and you might show an outburst of anger. A coach may say something like, hey, use that, all right, to like push you forward. Use it to motivate you to try harder and to play better. But he doesn't want you to be controlled by that anger to do something stupid, like lash out to that player or lash out to the referee, because then what's going to happen? You're going to get kicked out of the game. That's a small example, but that's the idea of emotions can make a good engine. They can motivate you, but they make a terrible driver. You don't want it to be the only thing that's directing your life. Now, in general, again, just a generalization, young people most often allow themselves to only be guided by emotions apart from truth. Right? That's not saying that means you're lesser than. No, it's your guys are growing. Right? You're learning how to understand these things more. You're learning how to, and that's why I'm here, Miss Christine, your parents, obviously God has put into your lives. That's why you have these guiding authorities to help you as you grow and mature to understand, all right, I can't just lash out when I don't get my way. Okay? It's cute when we see a little kid do it, when, somebody picks up the toy they haven't been playing with for like the last 10 minutes and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, they're all mad about it. It's like, all right, it's a little kid. It's not cute when it becomes an 18-year-old, a 25-year-old, a 40-year-old adult who lashes out in emotion, okay, instead of controlling that. You guys follow me? All right, so you want to, when emotions are out of control, it can lead to very dangerous outcomes. All right, so let's lead to our second point. I'm going to put up a bunch of words here, or phrases. I'm going to go through them. If you guys aren't able to get all of them, obviously you can look at my notes later, but I'll try to give you time. So these are just signs that you or somebody may be becoming more emotionally dependent than they probably ought to be at this time. Some of these things are fine when you're married, okay? Because there's a difference there. There's a difference between a dating relationship and a marriage relationship. There's a covenant there between not just you and your spouse, but between man and God as well. So let me just put them all out here to begin with. All right, number one, getting jealous easily, okay? And I mean by getting jealous easily, not for a good reason. Obviously, you see the person that you're talking to or dating, and you see them obviously doing something they're not supposed to, giving too much attention to another person. All right, there can be some reason to be jealous there. But what I mean by this is you just get jealous whenever they do something without you, or whenever they may, whatever seems like a sign to you that, oh, they're giving attention to someone else rather than me. All right, that's a sign that, hey, you're not married yet, okay? This relationship just started. All right, maybe you're getting a little too invested too soon. Expected obligation. It's kind of this idea like you expect them whenever, okay? And this is a hard thing to do. It's a natural thing, all right? This is also part of the immediate gratification, okay? But guys, girls, when you text somebody, they don't have to respond, or they're not obligated in general to respond to you that very second. You guys follow me there? But when you have this expected obligation, as if this person is supposed to react to you, or wait on you hand and foot, it's kind of showing you might have an unhealthy emotional dependency on this person, okay? They don't have to wait on you hand and foot. You're not married to them. They're not married to you, okay? They're not obligated to you. Next one, needed to be in constant contact, okay? Guys, you're not married yet. A lot of these things are answered by the simple fact that you're not married. And you must always be alone with them, okay? Especially as teenagers, you don't need that, okay? And that only leads to, and that opens the door for temptations and possible things that you just don't need to be even tempting yourself with, all right? If you feel, or if the other person's pushing you to like, hey, let's get alone, let's be by ourselves, away from those like your parents or other authorities who are there to help guide and protect you, that's a red flag. If they use phrases such as, well, if you really, actually, let me put this up next, saying I love you. I'm not saying you can never say I love you, as the dating relationship goes on, but it's when you say I love you too soon, okay? You're just so caught up in the infatuation that you say, oh, I love you, okay? Sometimes it may come out in, a boneheaded move where you're not thinking and you accidentally say it, all right. But when you're actually saying it and you're trying to convey to that person, oh, I do love you, and you've only been dating for like a month or something like that, okay? Slowly roll. Girls, if the guy does that, kind of like, what? But, and I've said this before, this is coupled with the always wanting to be in contact or wanting to spend time alone with you. If they use such phrases as, well, if you love me, then you'll, that's a red flag. Because if they follow up that phrase, if you love me, then you'll, and to follow it up with something that goes against what God has laid out in his word, that is definitely a no-go. That's a red flag. That's not something you need to pursue. Let me put up the rest for you. They want you to be distanced from this relationship is causing you to distance yourself from other good relationships, like your family, your friends, is distancing you from them because you're becoming too exclusive with this person. All right, that's emotionally dependent. You're starting to touch, and obviously, I'm not talking about in the general of like just like a little hug, shaking hands. You guys know that's what I'm talking about. All right, but you're starting to touch in a way that's not appropriate for people who are not married to touch. Okay. and I don't need to get into all the specifics of it, but you understand yourself, okay, what could lead you down a road to do something you shouldn't, well, don't allow yourself to touch in that way either, okay? Being irritable when apart, this kind of goes along with the always having to be in constant contact. If your day can never go right because you haven't had a text reply from this person, that might be a sign you're too emotionally dependent. Okay? Again, there's a difference from that when you're dating, especially as a young person, and you're married. There's a difference. But as a young person, when you're dating, if your day just can't be good unless that person replies back to you, there might be a sign there. Fear of losing that person. Okay, you guys already know what me and Miss Christine have said about this, but if your parents allow it even at the age of like 13, okay, to start dating, if you're a 13-year-old and you feel like, oh, I just can't lose this person, that's a sign of immaturity, and that's a sign of you're just too emotionally dependent. All right, guys, most chances are the first person's not going to be the person. Okay, some of you may know somebody like that. Somebody even be like, well, my parents, that's awesome. But nothing's perfect. And the first time is probably not going to be the person. So don't always be held in with this fear of losing that one person. All right, if it's not God's will, God has a different will for you. And then the last two, there's a loss of interest in spiritual things because you're more focused on this other person because you've given your heart to them instead of to God. All right, I'll give you a second to write all those down. But those are just, obviously this isn't an exhaustive list, but those are just all signs of, hey, I'm too emotionally dependent on someone that I just don't need to be that attached to at this time. All right, I'm not ready to be married yet. All right, I got my future ahead of me as far as, hey, now after high school, it's not marriage, it's actually college. I don't need to be this invested to this person at this moment, okay? So, given the illustration of a fire, okay, when you have these emotions, it's like a spark. If you're not careful, it become a fire. So, a wildfire. Thirdly, we're going to talk about how emotions can be controlled. All right? Fire, like emotions, need restraint. Okay? When is a fire good? In what type of restraint is a fire good, Elijah? Oh, yeah, a controlled burn to take out a lot of brush and so forth. Josiah Amadis? A candle. Yep, that is true. Birthday candle, scented candle. Do you have candles in your room, Josiah? All right. That's how you know you have sisters? A force. All right, thank you. Damari.
To keep warm.
But what would be the way that fire would be restrained to keep warm? In a
pit.
In a fire pit. In a fireplace. We'll do one more. Grace. Barbecue. Yeah. So we understand, because fire is not in itself a bad thing, when it's in a certain restraint, it's actually a very good thing. Okay? But when it's left outside of those restraints, when it's left just to spread amongst itself and it becomes that wildfire, becomes that destructive thing. Your emotions, left out of control, become that wildfire. But your emotions that you have towards this guy or girl, when restrained, especially as God designed it to be fully at its best, it can be a beautiful thing. Okay? And a lot of these emotions that you may have for that other person, when you're married, becomes a very wonderful thing. All right? That's the restraint, that's the boundary God has set up. The Bible says in Hebrews that the marriage bed is undefiled. It's talking about, hey, a lot of the emotions you have that lead to the love you want to express with that person is good in that restraint. Outside of that restraint, it's a devastating thing. All right? And especially, guys, as teenagers, when teenagers follow those emotions and they lead them to make those terrible decisions of sex outside of marriage, it is that wildfire, and it leads to a lot of destruction in people's lives. Okay? And it leads to a lot of poor decisions. That's why God says your emotions have to be restrained and in that good place. So how do we control our emotions? Number one, you yield to the Holy Spirit daily. Romans 6:13 talks about yielding your body or your members not as instruments of unrighteousness, but as instruments of righteousness unto God. You need more than your strength to control your emotions. Right? People have tried for eons to control their own. No. And it's a hard thing to do. You need God's strength to do it. Number 2, you want to ask for help. Ask for accountability to help you restrain these feelings you may be having for that other person. Proverbs 11 talks about in the multitude of counselors, all right, there is strength, there is goodness. Number 3, submit to spiritual authorities. All right, we've already mentioned many of these. Your parents, your pastors, you could be a godly coach, godly friends, godly teachers. Submit to your authorities who want your spiritual good in life, okay? They're going to help you be accountable. And guys, is it better to fight it'll make the difference to fight those emotions, like if you're trying to fight a wildfire with a hose as opposed to a fire truck, right? Which one do you think is going to be more successful, all right? Submit to those authorities. It's going to help you a whole lot more than you just trying to stick it out yourself because you're too embarrassed to talk to your parents about how you feel about somebody else. Your parents are there to help you, right? Their parents have been there before. They've been in that place before where they started having these sparks and stuff as well. And then number 4, make emotions follow truth, okay? How many of you guys were here when I did my series on emotional victory? Wow, so it's been a while. Some of you seen, all right, so it's been that might be one of our next series here, not the very next one, but coming up, I did this series on emotional victory, and it was talking about all your emotions that you have, because we all have emotions. But one of the main phrases that I had the teen class learn in that, and you guys have probably heard me say this before, is that your feelings do not always reflect reality, right? The way you feel about a situation or a person doesn't always reflect reality. Therefore, you shouldn't be solely driven by your emotions. You want your emotions to follow truth. And you can play this out in a lot of different situations. When you're angry at someone, all right, if you take a step back and you think about what's true in that situation, it's going to help you better react or relate to that person. All right, when you're feeling down, when you're feeling anxious, and when you reflect on the truths of God's word, it's going to help you better navigate those situations you're going through. Same thing when it comes to relationships. God desires for you to rule your emotions, not for your emotions to rule you. Proverbs 25 talks about that. Actually, someone turn to this for me. Proverbs 25:28. Jether.
Okay, Proverbs 25:28.
Yep.
He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls.
He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city broken down and without walls. All right? If you're just following your emotions, you're going to be a broken down city. If you allow yourself to be guided by truth, the truth of God's word, the truth of what the situation is, you're going to be that sturdy, strong city. Which leads us to our last point, what to do when emotions start to grow. All right, Pastor Tim, I hear that. All right, I need to contain the fire, okay? But what am I supposed to do when I'm starting to have those sparks, when I'm starting to have those feelings for that other person, and I'm thinking things I shouldn't, I'm becoming too emotionally dependent. What do I need to do now, Pastor Tim? All right, well, number 1, spend less time together. Guys, it's okay. You can spend less time together. Slow down. Well, again, you're not married. Okay, you don't need to spend every waking moment. You don't need to spend every moment looking at your phone, hoping they text you back and stuff like that. You can just spend less time with them. And that's another thing when it comes to the phone. Just because you're not physically with them, that doesn't mean you're spending less time with them. You guys follow me there? All right. If you feel like you're becoming too emotionally dependent, if you feel like those sparks are going to become something that you're not going to be able to control, you can slow it down. Here's the truth at the end of the day. If it's God's will that you end up with that person, okay, you spending a little more time apart with your family and growing other relationships you have right now because you're not married to that person, if it's really going to happen, they'll still be there at the end of the day. You guys follow me there? Don't feel like you'll lose them just because you spend less time with them. If you do, well, then they probably didn't feel the same way you felt about them, okay? So you can spend less time together. Keep the Lord first. Decide to hang around with other friends, okay? A lot of times when you become emotionally dependent, you become exclusive. You forgo those current friendships you had. Keep your relationship with that person group friendly. Don't, if you feel like you can't be with that person along with other people, like it always has to be alone, all right, that's not a good sign. Keep it group friendly. Like you guys, it's not a hard thing for you guys to hang out with other people. And again, I talked about obligation. You're not obligated to this person in any way. You're not married to them. Number 2, give less attention to this relationship. If you feel like it's becoming too emotionally dependent, feel like the sparks are growing too fast and might get out of restraint, give less attention to this relationship, meaning have a life outside of this relationship. Have interest outside of this relationship. Have a hobby outside. Guys, in your teen years is the prime time for you guys to discover, learn things that pique your interest to help you decide, hey, this may be where God's leading me in the future as far as a career field or what to study in college. You're going to miss out on all those opportunities if you become too emotionally dependent and all you do is focus on your boyfriend-girlfriend relationship at the age of 15. No, this is a time of growth to learn, experience, and discover, hey, this may be where God wants me to do in the future. But that you can't discover that if you're only focused on a teen relationship. Okay? You guys see the scale there? Like, oh, that's that, and then you're missing out on this whole opportunity. All right. Give less attention to the relationship. I'm not saying break it off with them. All right, hey, forget you. No, but have a life outside of it. But if it does get to the point where, you know what, it's still a struggle, be willing to take a break. And this kind of already alluded to it. If it's God's will, they'll be there at the end of the day or at the end of the line, okay? But if you know it's going to lead you or tempt you to do things that you ought not to do, be willing to take a break. That's you choosing, you know what, God, I want to follow you instead of, oh, I just want to continue to give my heart away to this person instead. All right, one is obviously a better decision than the other. When your emotions start to get out of control, take a break. It's tough, but it's wise to do. And especially as a teenager, it may seem like the biggest thing you've ever done in your life. But guys, in the grand scheme of your life, it's not the biggest thing. All right? It's not a divorce. Why? Because you're not married. All right? It's not that big of a thing if you stop the fire before it becomes a wildfire. Until you are ready for marriage, you don't need a relationship that is so emotionally dependent. A right friendship will strengthen you, but unhealthy relationships drain you and make you weak. If you discover yourself becoming too emotionally dependent, consider these things we talk about tonight. Hey, you're not, one of the biggest things I've said multiple times, you're not married yet, okay? You're not obligated to this person. This is a prime opportunity for you to learn and to grow and discover what God's will is for your life. But you can't do that when you give more place to a person than you do to God. All right? Emotions are good. The sparks are fine. But the fire is only good in God's boundaries and God's restraint. Control those emotions. Be led by your godly authorities. Be led by truth. All right? It's going to lead you into God's will.